If you're using GoHighLevel and your emails are going to spam, or you're setting up your emails for the first time, this video is going to show you how to avoid spam filters and make sure your domain does not get blacklisted. Hi, I'm Ethan. I've built over 300 GoHighLevels, and this is the exact advice I give to clients for what actually works in the real world with real campaigns, not just theory. So part one is email entitlement. I get this request all the time. A client says, hey, I'm going into spam. Can you just fix it for me? First off, I want to make it clear that you're not entitled to go into people's primary inbox. You can do everything technically right, but just by the nature of you sending business emails, you are going to get blocked some of the time. Think about your own inbox. There are probably thousands of emails in your promotion or spam tabs, and you're probably happy with this. That's the job of the email providers, to keep them happy, which means filtering out business emails. You have to understand it's an uphill battle, and nobody can guarantee that you won't go into spam. But if you follow these steps, you can give it your best shot. So that's really important because I think a lot of people misunderstand this first part here. Part two is going to be content is king. So I want to talk about content first because many businesses focus on the technical side, but that's relatively easy. Almost every time a client says that something is going into spam, I send a quick test email to my personal email from their CRM, and it shows up in my primary inbox right away. I think it's because many clients don't consider that content is probably 90% of the reason that you might go into spam. And so you can deep dive into email marketing. In fact, it could be an entire job. But I'm going to highlight the 20% of checklist items that you need in order to get 80+% of the result with resources so that you can go deeper if you want. So the subject line, the general advice is keep it short. So the really common example is that you might say, urgent, your website is broken, right? But when you open up the email, it says something like, I do website design to make sure that these problems don't happen. That's very misleading, and it's going to make people angry, and it's very likely to get a spam request. You definitely want your subject line to match what is in the actual content of your email. And then also you might want to front load some important information. So the first couple of lines in your email does actually show up in the email inbox, and it's called a preview text. And so you almost have a sub headline for your subject line, and that's going to be your first couple of words. And so you consider optimizing that as well. You're going to want to have short, no fluff messages. A common mistake is really long walls of text. Keep it as short as possible. Every single word should earn its place. You shouldn't have to repeat things or make things that are unclear or unnecessary. And so a quick structure that might help you is a intro. Hi, John, saw your website, thought it was awesome. Value, I'm looking to see if you wanted to improve your click-through rate on your email, and then a call to action. If you wanted, I could do a free demo for you through your website and give you some insights. If that seems valuable to you, let me know. So very quick, easy intro and structure. Obviously, I would copyright that a little bit more, but that's the basic idea. You want to talk like a human. A good tip is you can actually just say your script and pretend like you're talking to a friend. If it sounds unnatural or like you're doing things that you wouldn't normally say, that's weird, right? And you're not going to want to send that. A really good editor for this is the Hemingway app. It's going to improve not only your email deliverability, but also the quality of your messaging. A friendly CTA, you want to make sure at the end your call to action or what you want people to actually do is somewhat low pressure and specific. So the example I have here is, would next Tuesday work for a quick call? And you want to put it at an end with its own line, so its own space, so that it stands out. The common mistake that I see a lot of people do is just they'll put 4 CTAs or they won't have a clear CTA, right? And so you want to avoid both of those extremes. You want to have usually 1, maybe 2, if you're a little bit advanced CTAs. Say why you're reaching out in 1 sentence. Personalize if possible. So I saw your listing and loved if you can personalize it to their specific listing, that's good. If it's impractical to personalize to every single person, you can do it in bulk. So you can just say a compliment that would be applicable to a lot of people. Hey, saw that your website was really good. Loved your products on your website. Something like that's vague enough to sound a little bit personalized, but not necessarily have to be rewritten for every single contact. Plain text is literally no formatting at all. HTML usually has the little header on the top, almost like Microsoft Word editing options. Or if you see any kind of code in your email, then that's going to be an HTML. You can use a template if you're emailing people that know you. If you're starting to email people who don't know you, for example, a cold email especially, but also people who you're getting through ads, you might want to avoid templates. You're going to want to avoid all caps, red text, excessive punctuation, image heavy templates. So that's what I was talking about with the templates. And even links can really hurt if you have too many links and they're all over the place. Using low quality links can be very harmful as well. And then of course, you're going to want to avoid the obvious spam filters. Phrases like act now, claim your gift, save big today. If you have like big, bold colors and emojis, that could all be seen as spam triggers, and you're going to want to avoid those. This tool right here, this mail tester, is really good for avoiding those. The AI filters have gotten a lot better. So it's not necessarily concentrated on the words themselves, but it's more of the overall message. While this is a good general advice to avoid these spam words, it's becoming a lot more about the messaging. And so these tips above will be helpful as well. Bonus, the timing and sequence. Typically, people like to get messages between Tuesday and Thursday at around 10 a.m. their time. If it is an industry where people are slow to respond, you're going to want to wait longer. Whereas if it's a more fast-paced, somebody who's used to using the computer, then you might be able to bump this up faster. For example, a local business, you might be able to bump up within those 2 to 3 days. Whereas like a Fortune 500 company, you might want to wait even 2 weeks because they might not even see the email until the secretary or something goes through them. And then you would want to not look like you're doing a bunch of follow-up because it could be annoying. Max 4 or 5 emails per nurture sequence is generally a good rule. Sometimes people have very long nurture sequences. It just depends on how engaged they are with your content. So that is everything for this section here for the content. Very important. People often overlook it. Part 3, unsubscribe links. So this is a really common question that I get where people are like, hey, I don't want people to unsubscribe. So can you just take out the unsubscribe link? It is possible. You can go into the settings, then business settings, and then you go into the bottom right and untick a box that allows you to not have people unsubscribe. But the problem is that even if it's something that I've already signed up for, I don't have an option to unsubscribe, which is really annoying to me. And so I'll just hit the spam button because I just want it out of my inbox. A spam request is far worse than people just cleanly opting out. So it's in your best interest to include a clear unsubscribe link. In many cases, it's legally required, especially in the EU and certain places. Technical setup. This is often people normally focus on with these kind of email deliverability guides. The honest truth is that you basically just have to do it once and then you can forget about it. There's a decision to make with using your own domain. When you're sending emails, domains are what providers use to determine how trustworthy you are. It's part of the signals they use to get you into the inbox or put you into spam. So if you've spammed a lot, then you're going to likely have a bad reputation and you're more likely to go into spam. If you've never spammed and you're following best practices, you're more likely to get into the inbox. If you were to start sending emails with GoHighLevel as soon as you opened it without putting in a custom domain, you use what's called a shared domain for GoHighLevel. Essentially, all of the users inside of GoHighLevel share that domain, which means some people could mess it up. So you don't want to use that domain. Instead, you're going to want to make your own domain. A really common example is people will make what's called a subdomain. So for example, mail.yourwebsite.com. And this is great for nurtures and newsletters and things like that. You can use what's called your root domain, your domain without any kind of mail or anything in the front of it. The problem with that is sometimes the MX records can conflict and mess up the way your Gmail, Outlook, or Apple is sending. You have to make sure that you set it up correctly. Then you can also buy a burner domain. The idea of a burner domain is it's similar to your brand. So you might say info.optimizeoutreach.com or contactyourbrand.com, right? And the idea there is that it separates your domain from the domain you're using for your burner domain. Generally speaking, for most beginners, unless you're a relatively big company or you have a lot of experience setting up emails, I do recommend a burner domain a lot of the time. I lost a $2,000 a month client because I was using the Zapier automation that was basically sending from my main email to a client for basically sending lead data. And I didn't realize it, but that caused my domain reputation to be really bad. When I was sending over a proposal to this client, it actually hit their spam filter. Those 2 spam emails caused the client to lose confidence in me, and I lost that deal. Another example where clients have sent on accident, let's say 10,000 cold emails in one automation, and the domain reputation was tanked. But not just for their CRM domain, which it would have been isolated if they had a separate burner domain, but actually for their main domain, like their Gmail, their Outlook, things like that. And that's really the risk of it. And so that's why I often have clients set up burner domains. Then we're going to want to verify your SPF, DKIM, DMARC, and all of the other configurations. And so I'm going to walk through how that works. On the left-hand side, look for a button that says email services, then go to a page that looks like this. In this case, I do have a email service already set up, but I am going to go to dedicated domain and IP. Normally there might be a pop-up menu that might come up for you as well, and you can also hit that. So I'm just going to hit dedicated domain and IP on the top right. And I already have my domain here, but I am going to add a new domain just to show you. Hit add new domain, then put your domain. So remember, like I said, you will want to usually use a subdomain. So you can type in mail and then your domain.com. If you don't have a domain, you also can buy a domain inside of GoHighLevel, which is actually really nice. A lot of the time when I'm buying a burner domain, I will do that inside of here so that it's much, much easier. So in that case, all you would have to do is go to the domain section down here, and you will go ahead and purchase a domain right here. So you can search for your domain. Usually I have some kind of prefix or suffix to your main domain. So if your main domain is optimized outreach, you might say contact optimizedoutreach.com. Usually you want a .com, and usually you don't want it to have any kind of dashes. Of course, if you're outside of America, you can have a .uk or whatever it is. So you can see this one is available. So I can go ahead and buy this, and I would just buy it for the $12 for the year. Very affordable. That way it's going to be a lot easier when I set it up as well. So I'm going back into the email services, and I'm going to go back into the dedicated domain, add the domain, and then I'm going to type my domain. So in this case, I'm going to do email as the subdomain and optimizeoutreach.com. I'm going to hit add and verify. It's going to ask me to verify. I'm going to hit continue. If I've already connected through a service like GoDaddy or bought the domain directly in GoHighLevel, then it will just do it for me. But in this case, it did not. It's asking me to add these records. There is a video here that's actually quite helpful, but I'm going to explain what these records look like inside of my mail server. So I've logged into my domain provider. One tricky thing is that sometimes you can buy a domain inside of one platform, but then you might host it in another platform. And so if you run into any issues here, you might want to check that other platform. A web designer might host it on their own platform. I've got my optimized outreach, so I'm going to go ahead and edit the DNS. So that's a really important button to find. Usually you can contact the people who have sold you the domain, and they will help you walk through this. Here I have managed DNS records. You can see there's a type of DNS record. If I click on this, I can see the dropdowns A, MX, CNAME, TXT. And then if I go back into the GoHighLevel where it asks me to add these records, I can do that based on which records I have. So you can see the record types match what was on the other one, TXT, CNAME, MX. All I have to do is match the record type, put in a host, and then put in a required value. So it's very simple. So let me show you how. So let's do this TXT file first. Name, go back to my provider. And for the type, it is going to be the TXT. So that was the type. The name, I'm going to get rid of the @ and I'm going to put the name right here. And then the value, I'm going to take this value right here. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back to my provider, and I'm going to paste this record right here. And then I'll go ahead and hit this add record button. Now that's all I have to do. I can just keep going, and I can put in the CNAME. Make sure that your provider will usually default back to, let's say, the A record. And so you're going to want to make sure that it is using the correct record each time. You just do this 5 times, and then you should be able to see all of those records available. You should have created those records. If you see any kind of error happen where when you put in a record, it says there's a duplicate record or something like that, again, usually you can contact your provider, your hoster provider, or your webmaster, and they should be able to help you with that. And another thing is that there's a lot of website specific guides out there. So I would just type in how to add DNS in, and then your specific provider. So GoDaddy, hosting, or etc. And then we're going to go ahead and verify the records right here. And then it's going to bring up a page like this. Now, there is actually something tricky here where they don't say on the first page that you need to add a DMARC record, but I highly recommend that you add this DMARC record because this will help you not get spammed. So it's kind of a hidden field that doesn't show up on the first one that really should. It says this field is optional. Essentially nowadays, it is not optional. So I highly recommend it. You're going to see that it's a TXT record. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go back to my provider here. I'm going to switch the type. I'm going to go to my TXT. I'm going to edit the name right here. So I've copied in the name. I'm going to copy the value and then paste the value right here. Sometimes when I pasted in the DMARC, it added an extra space that looked like that. Sometimes that does happen just by copying it. And so you'll want to delete that extra space to make sure it's clean. And then you go ahead and add this record. Now, when you're done with that, you can verify this domain. It is going to take a little bit of time to verify. Usually it happens in under 2-3 minutes. But when you do verify, it is going to lock you out for a little bit. And then in 60 seconds, it's going to allow you to verify again. You can see that the 2 records that I did add are verified. One trick is that you can actually refresh the whole page and verify again if you don't want to wait. Then you can just go ahead and keep verifying. And then as soon as it verifies, it'll turn green and it'll show your domain as being verified, just so you can see what that looks like. I'm going to hit the go back to domain section here. It will appear to look like something like this. And that is how you know. You will want to look for this SSL issued. All right, and so that is the technical setup. Now let's go into warmup. The idea behind a warmup is that you want to have some kind of system that's sending out emails for you so that it looks like you're using this email regular. And the main benefit is that as the providers see that you're sending emails more regularly, it will show that you're trustworthy and build up the reputation of your domain. Instead of blasting out a big email immediately, especially if you're migrating from something like Kajabi or Mailchimp or another CRM, you might want to have a simple warm-up plan. For example, you might do 20 to 30 emails a day. You can send those manually using one-on-one emails from your sales team, or if you need a tool, I'll get into that in a little bit. You would start off with a relatively small amount of emails. You would go up to 50 a day, you'd go up to 100 a day, and then you would scale if needed, depending on the volume. Typically, you want to send about 30 to 50% of the volume that you're doing with your warm-up. And so if you're sending 100 a day, you could safely send maybe 50 a day or something like that. The GoHighLevel native warmup, they recently introduced the native warmup tool. It's very basic, and from what I've seen, it is super slow. The warmup period is a lot of weeks. There's a tool called Warmup Inbox. If you just have one domain that you're trying to warm up, it's technically one specific inbox. I like Warmup Inbox a lot. It's a very good tool. It lets you warm that inbox up. It's usually around $30 a month. And it also gives you stats on how your domain reputation is going. Even if you are starting to send emails through your GHL, it'll give you stats and ideas so that you can understand where your reputation is at, which is really nice. At some point, it becomes worthwhile to switch to a tool like Instantly or SmartLead. Instantly is more popular, but SmartLead is actually my preferred platform. It's smartlead.ai if you're looking for it. This allows you to do is for one set price, you can have pretty much unlimited domains. They might change that policy as they move forward, but it becomes a lot more cost effective than having a bunch of warm-up inboxes for domains. I think it's usually around 3 domains is when you're going to want to make that switch. All right. So that is email warm-ups. Now, migrating from another platform. Let's say that you're used to using a platform like Mailchimp. So people have opted in for your Mailchimp and you set up your DNS records and everything. You have to almost do a soft reset of your reputation with this new platform. Look through whatever email platform you were using before and try to find the highest engagement segments or contact lists, and then start sending some reintroduction emails, maybe some very mild, light emails that you know are going to be able to get response, like a really good newsletter or something very valuable like a lead magnet that you can give away to get people engaging and hopefully not get that many unsubscribed. Cold email is a little bit different than CRM nurtures. GoHighLevel is typically used as an inbound CRM tool where you're not doing outbound. Usually the way I recommend people do it is they'll use a tool like SmartLead or Instantly, those other warm-up tools that I mentioned earlier. They can also be used for sending. And then what you do is you simply move people over into GoHighLevel at a certain key point. For example, positive reply or booked appointment are the most common ones that people use. So if someone says, yeah, I'm interested, you have some kind of form or process, maybe even an automation to move that person from SmartLead into GoHighLevel as an interested lead. And then you continue the conversation from there. Or you might just send them a booking link from your GoHighLevel calendar settings, and then they book in, and then they usually automatically come in to GoHighLevel, and hopefully you have your tracking set up correctly, so that all gets accounted for. So why would you not want to use GoHighLevel? The problem is that the tools specifically for cold email are just a lot more sophisticated. There's this thing called syntax where essentially it'll rewrite the same script, but you can put little variations. So you might say, I'm looking for a condo or I want to find a condo, right? Essentially, you can have that all throughout the email. And when you combine the power of exponential math there, you get a lot of different combinations of emails. And so no email that is sent out is essentially the same. GoHighLevel just doesn't have that option yet. They're more of a CRM platform. You can, inside of GoHighLevel, set up multiple domains and then you can rotate them randomly. Other tools will actually monitor your domains. And then based on if some domains are getting a lot of spams, they'll actually lower your rotation for that specific domain, meaning they'll send less emails from that domain and move to higher authority domains until you warm up and you repair that reputation over time. You do potentially have the risk of killing your main domain. If you're not using a burner domain, and again, you're doing cold email, then you could potentially be hurting your main domain, your regular Gmail or Outlook or Apple sending, so that regular customers are not getting your emails, which would be really bad. If you're sending less than 50 cold emails per day, you can use GoHighLevel. People who are doing cold email campaigns send out thousands per day. It's important to know the math on this. If you are sending 3 emails per person and enroll 1 person per day, you've got day 1, day 2, day 3. On day 3, there's going to be somebody who's getting the day 3 email. Somebody's going to be getting the day 2 email who is enrolled on day 2. And then somebody's going to be getting the day 1 email who is just enrolled today. For example, 50 divided by 3 gives you about 17 contacts per day that you can enroll in this campaign. You do have to be careful, but I'm talking about emails per day, not contacts. And so that is the GoHighLevel email ultimate guide. I hope that you really paid attention to the details because there was a lot of nuances there that are really important to pay attention to. And so somewhere on this video, I'm giving you my full written guide as well, because that is going to be updated more often than potentially this video can be. And if you like the content, feel free to like. If you are looking to have your GoHighLevel built with these best practices, so you don't have to think about it and know that everything is working, and have your team coached with a simple and scalable process, feel free to reach out and I will help you through that process. I look forward and good luck on building your business. Have a good one.